Breaking news here on CBS Sports HQ. Georgia still good at football. 65-7. The game was over in the first half. Georgia scored on all 6 of its drives, scoring 17 points off of 3 TCU turnovers. Dogs defensive back Javon Bullard picked off Max Duggan twice in the first half. Stetson Bennett had 4 touchdowns in the first half, 2 passing, 2 rushing, had 2 more passing scores in the second half, giving him 6 total touchdowns for the game. No one has had more total touchdowns in a national title game in the BCS CFP era. Because they were up so big, Kirby Smart took Bennett out of the game with 13 minutes to play. Georgia sets the record for most points and the largest margin of victory in a BCS CFP championship game. 65-7. They scored on 10 of their 12 drives. 9 touchdowns, 1 field goal, and 1 punt. And look, we told you. I'm not going to sit here and say that this was like we were telling you to put your money on TCU. I didn't tell you that. BMAC didn't tell you that. Brady Quinn, Josh Pate, Barrett, Sallee, Todd Furman, Tom Fornelli. Georgia hit the over by themselves. The total was 62. I mean, look at
that. They scored 65 points.
I mean, look, it's knowledge in your mind, money in your pocket. We've been watching this team all season long. So I'm not going to sit here and say, well, you guys got lucky. No, we've been studying this team for 15 straight weeks. And they put on a clinic. Georgia, first team to repeat as a national champion since 2011-2012, the first in the college football playoff era. All right, here with 2-time Super Bowl champ Bryant McFadden and CBS Sports HQ college football analyst Barrett Sallee. BMAC, what did we just witness 65-7?
A beatdown. A beatdown from start to finish. This was a total dominant performance from UGA. Clearly, they've been the best team in college football. And I said this during the pregame show. Unfortunately for TCU, Ohio State, they woke up the beast. The slow start for UGA in the Peach Bowl had to rally from behind to beat Ohio State. I felt like the sense of urgency would be there in tonight's matchup, and oh boy, was it there. Yes, sir, you talk about just a total dominant performance. Stetson Bennett saved his best game for last.
Barrett, we said this would be a coronation. This is the definition of a coronation and what BMAC said, a beatdown by the Bulldogs.
Yeah, I mean, the game was over the moment Georgia came out of the tunnel. It's JV versus varsity. TCU doesn't have the size. They don't have the speed. They don't have the depth. They didn't have the kind of prowess and kind of team that you need to be a national champion. And look, Georgia has slowly built itself. I don't think people remember Kirby Smart had never coached as a head coach before when he took over Georgia. In year 2, he's playing for a national championship. Now he's won back-to-back national championships. He's 33-1 over his last 34 games. And I think this begs the question now, is this Georgia team one of the best football teams of all time, college football teams of all time? I don't necessarily think so, but the case can be made, and to be a pretty compelling case at that. This was proof positive that Georgia is on the brink of a dynasty, and the dog dynasty doesn't look like it's slowing down anytime soon.
Yeah, I think in regards, of course, this will be a conversation I think we will enjoy throughout the offseason, talking about one of the best championship teams to ever do it in college football. Clearly, you can make a small argument, I think, for this Georgia's team based on how well they performed in the championship game. But then when you look at some of the elite teams that we've seen in years past, Barrett, I think, if you factor in what we saw with LSU a few years ago, right? I mean, look at all the pros that they had on that team that have gone on to the NFL and that have been extremely dominant, not to mention the star power they had at the quarterback position. So when you factor in what we've seen from UGA last year, this year, no question, Stetson Bennett has exceeded the expectations set for him. But then when you talk about some of the other past champions that we've seen, that we've watched, I think that could be a huge deciding factor in which team you pick to be your all-time great, because that Joe Cool Burrow for LSU, he was a bad man then, and he's still a bad man right now.
That's true. Stetson Bennett will now have 5 game MVPs in college football playoff games.
Is that good?
Yeah, that's good. For a 3-star prospect out of high school,
walk on,
that wore a mailman hat to showcases 25 years old, becomes the 7th quarterback to win back-to-back national championships. I mean, this is incredible.
One thing I know for sure.
Think about this.
Go ahead, Barrett.
Think about this. He went from walk-on to national champion. However, he also was Baker Mayfield on the scout team in 2017 for Georgia. He went from a faux Baker Mayfield to the most legendary quarterback in Georgia history. It's unbelievable.
Agreed. No doubt about it.
29
the best quarterback to ever play.
Look at this. How it started, how it's going.
Love
right?
it.
Right? I mean, look at that. That says it right there.
Best quarterback to ever play for Georgia.
Best quarterback ever to play for Georgia.
No question.
Yeah.
Yep.
No question.
No doubt.
That's not debatable.
What we talked about pregame, the three of us, what did we talk about? We talked about pressure rate.
Yes.
What did Stetson Bennett have time in this game to do?
To do whatever he wanted to do. And that's something that I was concerned with when we received that cool, big-time stat in regards to how well the offensive line unit protect Stetson Bennett and the issues in regards to putting pressure on opposing quarterbacks from TCU's defense that surfaced tonight. And man, did Stetson Bennett just have the most comfortable time in the pocket to do whatever it is he wanted to do, plus more. If you give Stetson Bennett time, we've seen this time and time again throughout his tenure as the starting quarterback for Georgia, he's going to make things happen, and that's what we saw tonight.
Yeah, Georgia allows pressures on less than 19% of dropbacks, second fewest in FBS, and TCU had problems delivering pressure all season long. They were ranked 125th in FBS. Stetson Bennett, I mean, is this one of the all-time greatest college football quarterbacks?
I won't say that.
Yeah, I would say that. I would say
great?
that because all-time, how do you define success? Because I define success as being a leader that has his team on his back and leading himself to that kind of success. Look at what Stetson Bennett has done. We always talk about, hey, he was, walk on to junior college and back to Georgia. This is a guy who they literally did not want playing quarterback 13 months ago. There were calls for JT Daniels to start in the playoff last year, and all Stetson does is just brush that off. He does not care, and he leads Georgia to 2 straight national championships. I think he is one of the all-time greats. He's not one of the most physically talented guys in the world. He's not going to have as successful as an NFL career as some of those guys. And obviously, some of those guys played for pretty good football teams. Stetson made Georgia what it is. I think a lot of folks would say, well, it's easy to win with all that kind of talent around. No, it's not. It's really hard as a college student to win consistently, and Stetson did it with a brand new cast this year and as not the most physically talented kid in the world. So in terms of talent, no, he's not. I don't think there's any doubt about that. One of the best quarterbacks in college football history, I don't think there's any doubt he has to be in that conversation.
The reason why I disagree, and I think this is a quality, strong debate to have, is because Stetson Bennett had the best situation a quarterback would want to have surrounding him when you look at the talent, when you look at the pros, when you look at the structure, when you look at everything that you will want to walk into, he had. Now, granted, he took advantage of the opportunities. I'm not saying that he did not, because he balled out. He developed. He became a better quarterback throughout his starting time there at UGA. But when you talk about some of the best quarterbacks that we've ever seen do it in college football, the greatest, I feel like when you talk about being great as an individual player at your respectable position, you can take your talents anywhere in the country, and you will always surface to be the best player on the football field. I'm not quite ready to say that in regards to who he is as an individual quarterback, but no question, in this situation, Stetson Bennett performed. He outkicked the coverage based on the expectations. But when you talk about all-time greats in college football at the quarterback position, that is a long list. There's a long list of iconic names that if you said, give me that player and put him over there, and we're going to win ball games, regardless of what is surrounding him. That is a tough task when you talk about throwing him into that conversation. But I think it's debatable.
He's a winner.
He is a winner. You cannot knock that. He definitely won ball games, and he did it the right way.
He is a winner. And we just got the Hall of Fame, the 2023 Hall of Fame class announced today. Throw Tim Tebow out, because Tim Tebow is a whole different realm. Is Stetson Bennett going to be in the Hall of Fame one day? I think he's got to be.
I agree with that.
I think based on what he's done, I think he has to be.
Yeah. I think, me personally, anytime you win 2 national championships, better yet, you go back-to-back in regards to having that opportunity to get into the College Football Hall of Fame, no question. No question. I think that's a given right there. It should be.
And this speaks to the level and the ability of Kirby Smart to develop talent, right? They lost 15 players to the NFL draft this last season.
Yeah.
5 went in the first round from their defense. That was historic last season, that won the national championship.
Yeah.
Didn't dip into the transfer portal at all. And we know who Kirby Smart, his mentor, is Nick Saban. He's a disciple of Nick Saban. What does this say about his ability to develop talent and put Georgia into the dynasty conversation? Because I think you win 2 titles and you're in that's a dynasty in Athens.
I think when you look at Kirby, number one, he's a very, very instinctive coach. He's been around the game of ball for quite some time. Number 2, he's done a unique job in getting quality guys on his staff. Look at Todd Monken and what he's done offensively. Remember, for such a long time, Barrett, they had an old generic style of play on the offensive end. Now they've opened things up over the last few years, and now we're starting to see them reap the benefits of the change in the offense, schematically speaking, and also to having an experienced quarterback that you've helped develop. And remember when LSU won the championship some years ago and they lost all of those pros? It was a significant drop. And then, of course, a few years later, heck, they got a new head coach. We saw Georgia lose a handful of players to the National Football League, and they improved dramatically. So Kirby Smart has been wonderful in regards to developing and being able to sustain the level of play, and I don't see them slowing down anytime soon.
I don't either. And it's interesting that you mentioned Saban and Smart together, because I just wrote a story about this on CBSSports.com. It should be published right about now.
Oh, I'm aware. But, I'm all about selling you, my friend.
Oh, is it already up? Is it already up? It might have been already up, because I wrote it during the fourth quarter because not much else was going on. But I think, consider this, right? When Nick Saban and Kirby Smart, from 2008 to 2022, by and large, the landscape hadn't changed all that much. Nick is still the greatest coach of all time, and he still deserves to be above Kirby Smart in that discussion. However, if Kirby, who had not been a head coach up until taking the Georgia job, not only develops a dynasty, which he has right now, but also does through the NIL era, the transfer portal era, a 12-team playoff era, there is a lot of different variables that Kirby will have to deal with long term than Nick Saban will have to deal with. Because, look, Nick is signed through 2028 or whenever it is, but he's 71 years old. Kirby's 47, and he's just getting started. So it is going to be interesting to see how Kirby navigates, because, like you said, he did not get a single player in the transfer portal last year. Now that is going to change. Dominic Lovett, Ra Thomas, a couple other guys are going to come in as well. But this is a brand new era, and if Kirby's able to navigate this, you're talking about one of the top coaches of all time.
Well, he was the defensive coordinator the last time we saw a team run it back. Alabama 2011, 2012, and now he's the head coach for Georgia, the first team in a decade and the first team in the BCS CFP era. Of course, the first team in the CFP era, because it's been around since 2014, to run it back. That's incredible what he's done. Again, 10th coach to win back-to-back national titles, as we mentioned, the last is Nick Saban. I want to shift gears here and give some credit and give some love to Sonny Dykes. He replaced a legend in Fort Worth in Gary Patterson. And a lot of those players, a lot of those kids were guys that Gary Patterson recruited. He leads TCU all the way to the national championship game. 200-1 to win the national title preseason. Picked 7th in their conference to finish 7th in the Big 12. And they get all the way to the Natty. What does it say about Sonny Dykes in his first season to do what he did?
Tremendous job. And I don't want this lopsided win to overshadow everything that he was able to do as a head coach for TCU in year 1. But he was phenomenal. And don't forget, TCU last year only won 5 ball games. Didn't even go to a bowl. Remember, the start of the season, Max Duggan was not the starting quarterback. He wasn't supposed to be the guy. But eventually he jumped into the saddle, never looked back. So this was a great job for Sonny and his entire staff, the players, everyone involved, to be able to get to this moment to get into the playoffs, beat Michigan, take care of Michigan, and find a way to get to the championship game. And I know what happened tonight clearly will overshadow some of the great things that they were able to do, but you can never sleep on how they got to this moment. Tremendous job. Like I said, this team won 5 games last year. They didn't even make a bowl.
Barrett, I mean,
it's been remarkable.
Yeah. I mean, how incredible to think about what he did with that program in one season.
Well, and Sonny, he's kind of had a journeyman career as a head coach. He wins a little bit and then gets disenfranchised and somebody moves on. But this is a guy, and I know Sonny a little bit, he relates to his players very well. He's a very likable guy. And I don't necessarily like the term players coach because I think pretty much every coach is out for the success of his players. But he recognizes how different players need to be treated. And he's genuine. He's authentic. And those things, I think, B-Mac, you know this more than anybody. Those two things, I think, are very important. Recognizing personalities and also being authentic. Because if you're a fake head coach, if you're trying to replicate something or you're not honest and you're not genuine, it definitely filters through a locker room. And Sonny's not like that. He's done a great job. He walked in day one. He convinced Max Duggan to stay. Max Duggan could have left. I mean, he could have left. But he said, I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to see if this program can be built the way it needs to be built. And obviously, they had a great run. I think the biggest thing, don't let this beatdown sour you on TCU. It's still a really competitive football team that is going to sustain that success under Sonny Dykes for a long time.
Georgia sets the record for most points and the largest margin of victory in BCS CFP championship game history. Wow. 65-7, back-to-back national champs. BMAC, Barrett, Sallee, appreciate the insight, appreciate the conversation as Kirby Smart builds a dynasty in Athens. Hey, check out BMAC on his podcast, All Things Covered, with former LSU star and Vikings corner Patrick Peterson. Entertaining, engaging, talk to some of the biggest names in both the sports and entertainment worlds. All Things Covered. Download and follow today.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.